Alright, this time I'm working on a drawer box. I thought it'd be fun to show you guys how I make these. This is a dresser that I'm working on, and we're just going to be looking at the drawer box. So that's that tan part right there, not the drawer front, so we'll get rid of him. Just this guy right here. As you can see, I've got most of them already made, just missing that one near the bottom there. So let's look at it. These things are made from 1/2-inch Baltic birch ply, but I should point out it doesn't have to be that. It could be any 1/2-inch stock that you have available. You also want some of this 1/4-inch thick stuff. I'm going to go ahead and grab this measurement right here, this gap in between. I got about 7 3/4 inches, so I'll go ahead and set this for 7, just to give us some space on the top and bottom of the drawer box. And just in case you're confused about which measurement this is, it's this guy right here. The next part that we have to do here involves cutting this little slot here, and that's to enable that bottom panel to go ahead and sit in the sides there, and you'll see how we do that. So if we want a gap with a 1/4-inch depth, I like using these little 1/4-inch square brass setup blocks. They enable me to raise the blade just to that height with the saw turned off and unplugged, obviously. And then you can see I've actually made a pencil mark on this board about a 1/4 inch in from that edge. That enables it to have that lip at the bottom there to enable that bottom panel to sit where it's supposed to. And I'll go ahead and cut this slot into each of these boards. I will note that it's easier to do this when they're all one piece rather than cross-cutting them first into their individual component parts and then doing it. Then all you do is just grab a scrap of that bottom panel stock and you go ahead and mark the thickness of it there. Move your blade over or your fence over and cut a second line right next to the first, and that creates the gap wide enough. Next you can grab your miter gauge and your table saw, and you can go ahead and cut a square edge on this stock. I like to do that first before flipping it over and ultimately cutting these side panels to length. I used a length of about 15 inches. Obviously your project's going to differ, but using that stop block enables you to get accurate cuts of the same dimension every time without having to reset or measure anything. It's very convenient. The front and back of my drawers were a little bit longer. They were 24 inches, so I had to take them over to the sliding miter saw. Just use whatever tools you have to get this part done. This next part only applies to the back panel of the drawer, but once it's cross-cut, I like to trim it just a little bit shorter in height than the other ones, and you'll see why. The last piece you have to make prior to assembly is actually this bottom panel here. That's the only piece we're missing so far. And what you're going to do is take your 1/4 inch thick material, and you're going to take a total outside width measurement. This is the entire space you have available for the width of the drawer to sit into. Mine happened to be 24 inches. And if you look closely at how this is put together, you realize you're losing half the width of that thickness of the material there. And that's about a 1/4 inch in my case, because we're using the 1/2-inch stock. And you lose it twice. So you're going to take that 24-inch measurement, and you're going to take 2 of those off of it, which comes out to 23.5. On the front side of the drawer, in my case the long side, you're going to do the reverse. You're going to actually want that material to stick out just a half the thickness of your side material. So you have this groove on the front panel of the drawer here corresponding to this piece that sticks out like a tab just a little bit, and those will interlock together. Now on the back side, you actually want to leave it completely flush, like you can see right here. You don't want to trim it short or trim it long. You actually want to leave it flush. Now when the drawer box is all assembled, here's what it's going to look like. This is from the front side where you have that smooth face, you have the side, the bottom, and then you go around the back. And this is where we left that bottom panel a little bit long and the back panel here just a little bit short. When we come underneath and we try to install this here, what we're going to do is go ahead and let these two surfaces butt up against each other. Don't glue them, and pop a screw in here where each of these two circles are. Then if this bottom panel ever gets damaged through water or through pressing on it or anything like that with age, since it is the thinnest panel, what you can do is go ahead and slide out this entire panel just like this. And what it's going to do is it enables you to change out that panel with another panel and then just screw it back into place. So it's super helpful to be able to do. I like to do that with my drawer, make the components just a little bit modular and interchangeable. It's really helpful later on down the road. Alright, the next step is going to be assembly, or as it's called in woodworking, the glue up. The name of the game here is preparedness. So what you want to do is go ahead and do a dry fit before you actually get out any of the glue. Dry fit just means you're putting the pieces together and then making sure that they interlock the way that you expect them to, so that when you actually get the glue out and it's wet and starting to set, there's no surprises. You also want to go ahead and get your air compressor ready, or alternatively you can use a screw gun or just hammer nails in by hand. Again, use whatever tools you have. I was using a pneumatic nail gun when I put this together. The last piece is you want to make sure you have your clamps ready, and you want to have a wet rag just in case there's any squeeze out from the glue. You can clean it up on the spot and not have to worry about scraping it off later. Alright, and we are ready for the final stage of putting this project together, which is the assembly. So as you can see there, I've got my rag, I've got my glue, I've got my brad nailer there, and I'm using 18 gauge brad nails that are about an inch long. You'll see that here. And they're an inch long just so they can penetrate through the material and into whatever I'm nailing them to. Now I won't narrate the whole drawer assembly. You notice I haven't taken it completely apart from the dry fit. That's fine. But I will just narrate this first little one here. I'm doing some glue on there, and then you can see that I'll take the brad nailer and I'll position it very carefully. Sometimes it takes some adjusting. You want to make sure you go nice and slow with putting your brad nails in. And a word to the wise with these pin nails here, pin nails, brad nails, same thing. They are meat seeking. They will hit your finger if they can. So you always want to make sure that you move your flesh out of the way. They will absolutely find it if they can. So that includes holding your fingers not in the direct path of the nail as it comes out. And if you have to hold it at least an inch away if you're using inch-long nails. That way its entire length can't penetrate through and hit you in the finger. That'd be a bad time. And you can actually see that once I'm finished nailing each of these joints, I do use that wet rag there, just wet with a little bit of water and wrung out, just to wipe off any of that glue out. Like I say, it's a lot harder to scrape it off when it's dry than it is to just wipe it off while it's still wet. When it came to the back panel, it wouldn't lock into place like the other ones because it's cut a little bit shorter, and it was a little fiddly to put in. So I went ahead and grabbed that bar clamp you see on there, clamped it into place first after gluing it. You can see I moved my fingers well out of the way there before throwing in a couple of pin nails. You should be able to pin nail right past the clamp there, not through it, but just on either side of it. My favorite way to check for square on these drawers is just to use Pythagorean theorem and measure across, and the diagonals for each side should equal each other. You can see here that I'm getting ready to put the screws in the back side. I'm measuring 8 inches on center across here just to cut that 24-inch span into thirds to give it some good support. And truthfully, I actually cut the back panel just a little bit too short, but it's not going to matter too much. You'll see where the screws go in there. Though I didn't show it on camera, I did pre-drill and countersink for these screws because, you know, I'm not a barbarian. Okay, so with the drawer box built, here's a brief word about installing them. Let me put you inside here so you guys can see what's going on. I went ahead and installed these ribs ahead of time into the drawer carcass here, the dresser carcass. I like using these ball bearing steel drawer slides. So all you do is you just clamp them onto here and you go ahead and screw them in, and then you attach them to the drawer side as well, and they just slide right in, you'll see. The key to this step is just making sure that you're level and that you're flush with the front of the face frame. And then you go ahead and use what's called a VIX bit or a self-centering bit and pop in a couple of screws. It's pretty easy. It's hard to go wrong in this step. Just make sure it's even. After you're done with that, all you do from here is just flip around and go ahead and do the other side. Once you've got both sides installed, you're going to go ahead and take the drawer slide apart. And what you see me doing here is I'm actually positioning the drawer and marking where the other side of the drawer slide is going to come to. And I'll adjust that by about a 1/4 inch, a little bit further down than it actually was, in order to allow the drawer to have just a little bit of space below it so you're not writing on the face frame. Then you use that same measurement transferred over in order to register where the drawer slide is going to be screwed down to. And that's about it. That's all there is to it. Just flip it over and do the other side. Once you're done, I would say give all the corners and edges just a quick light sand to make it a little easier on the hands for repeated use, but go ahead and install it in the drawer carcass, and there you go. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you again in the next one.